Okay, next question says, I was in a bad relationship for a long time and feel afraid to date / not ready to date again, even though the breakup happened a year ago. How will I know when it's time to date? I decided to focus on myself and widen my friendships, but I'm still struggling. Speaking directly to your question, how will you know when it's time to date? The short answer is you don't. Like you, there's not a magic day. There's not a magic number. Uh, One rule of thumb that I've heard is 1 week for every month of the relationship, and that's over time. That's tended to prove somewhat true. That if you date for 6 months, about 6 weeks later, you tend to feel a little bit more normal, a little bit more right in your head space and in your heart space. So I could see that. I think it's a common misconception that you have to be 100% healed and evolved and whole before you can date again. I think there's a difference in you actively pursuing relationships versus you responding to an invitation for a date. If this is something that you're like, I'm not vibing with people around me, so I'm not going to ask them, okay, that's fine. But if this is a, hey, somebody asked me out, they're following rule one. It's biblical and it's legal. They love Christ. They're running after him, and I was running after him, and we poked up. We thought each other were cute. Well, then give them a shot. Give them a shot. But so that's on the surface, okay. And if that's all the question was, then you can stop here. But there are a few things around the question that I feel like need addressing, and I don't know that I'll have a clean conscience if I completely ignore them in this. I decided to focus on myself and widen my friendships, but I'm still struggling. I think that's the appropriate next phase following a breakup is focusing on your relationship with Jesus. And I'm just going to presume that when you say I focused on myself, that you meant you focus on your relationship with Jesus, not just if you're a guy that it's hashtag gain season, or that if you're a girl that this was, I don't even know what the girl equivalent of gains season is, but that this wasn't that you became your favorite physical version of yourself ever season, but that this is actually talking about you and your walk with Jesus. And you might have implemented some healthy personal self-care things, and those are appropriate, but yeah, so focus on yourself. That's more about me walking with Jesus and adding in healthy options, not gain season with a side dish of Jesus. Widen my friendships, right? Like hopefully this is being a horseshoe, not just widen my friendships by partying and getting over somebody that way. Add to your friendships, but take the current ones that you have and take them deeper. It was following a really hard, difficult breakup that one of my best friends and I got close. We kind of knew one another. And then during this breakup, he would just show up in my apartment sometimes because he knew I was riding that struggle bus and I was sitting front row. And it was through that time that we became really close friends. And I ended up being the best man in his wedding years later. He ends up playing... he was in my wedding. He played guitar and sang during the ceremony, and he played guitar and sang the first dance that my wife and I danced to as a married couple. That's a window of time for some new best friends. Drake was wrong. No new friends is not the approach here. But you say you're still struggling. I wonder if I'm still struggling, and this is not. I'm not saying this is true for you. I'm trying to read between the lines here. There are certain, we talked in another video, there are these solid boundaries that are there because if we cross them, it impacts us different. Paul will say that sexual sin, all sin is equal, but sexual sin is different because it's a sin against myself. Well, but Andy, if I have sex with someone else, is it really a sin against myself? And the answer is yes, because your body's involved in it. If and that's different in the case of sexual assault. And if that's what was involved here, then it's not your fault. And I hope that you have someone you can talk to. But if not, please call the church, and we will help you find somebody to talk to and discover some next steps with this. But anyways, if you were a part of a consenting crossing of boundaries, then what you may be dealing with are just the natural cause and effect of crossing those boundaries. If this is the person you lose your virginity to, if this is a person that you sleep with, if we've crossed emotional boundaries, or if we cross spiritual boundaries together, it's going to take longer to get over that. I still don't think you wait till you're 100% healed to go on a date again. I also don't think you date the next Friday night. But it's going to take longer because we ran out of bounds. And when you run out of bounds, it takes a little bit more time for the play to start again. There's just kind of some natural consequences with it. If we sleep together, we've become one, but and in a physical sense, and that has some lingering effects, and it just kind of does things with our brains. We've dropped a couple different chemicals when we slept together, and so our judgment is clouded, and now our body is craving something it wasn't craving before, or it's craving it in a new way. So that can impact struggling. If that's what you meant by bad relationship, is that we had committed some sin, I understand. I think discipleship is something that you should be involved in, but if you're not, I think this is something that through discipleship on a spiritual level will help you move forward. If this is something that we're talking emotional and mental health, if we're talking something that happened to you, not something that you partook in, then I think counseling is a solid option. And when I say counsel, look, I love my family. There's some really smart people in my family, but they're not counselors. And if they are counselors, they're not allowed to counsel me per their ethical code. I'm talking a degree on the wall. Okay, maybe you go talk to somebody like that and get some tools for moving forward. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that a year later you're hurting. I'm sorry that, because in a bad relationship, it's a hard thing to get out of it. And it's an even harder thing to stay out of it. So if you've stayed out of it for a year and you still feel like you're back at day one, that breaks my heart for you. So please know anything that I say, I fully say with a heart that hurts for you and with you. But please also know that's not unique and special to me. Jesus' love for us is not expressed in the fact that he gives us quick silver bullet answers, quick one little things that'll fix and cure all these ails. Yes, his saving grace does cure the greatest ail, which is our separation from God. But the love of a Savior that your heart breaks and it breaks his heart and he just sits there with you, that's how he expresses his love for us sometimes, oftentimes. And he'll use those friendships that you've widened. So if they are unaware of what's going on, maybe invite them in. If they're not people you can trust with that, maybe look for different ones. But my heart hurts for you, and I am sorry. I don't think there's a magic time. If somebody asks you, give them a shot. But I do understand the hesitancy.